In order to really succeed in college, it helps to get into the mind of your college professor. Why are they structuring the course like this? Why are we covering this material and then that material? I'm going to explain to you the basic principle that all college faculty use when constructing their courses. And this is going to reveal something significant and useful that you can use as a student in order to do well in your college courses. But before I do that, I have to explain a little bit about how they do undergraduate education in England. I wasn't always so mature and distinguished. It feels like a long time ago now, but I was once a student at Oxford, and then also at Cambridge, a long, long time ago. They have a different system over there in England. At Oxford and Cambridge, the grades for undergraduate students are determined entirely by a set of exams that they take at the end of each year. That's right. When I was at Cambridge, for example, I spent the entire month of April sitting alone in the library all day studying for my exams. All day, alone. And then, over the course of 1 week in early May, I had to take half a dozen written exams. These were on pieces of paper, and I used a pen, and I would sit, and there'd be a question. You'd get a question, and you don't know what the question's going to be in advance, although you can guess because you get to look at previous year's questions. And you get the question, and then you have 3 hours or 4 hours to write an essay, right? And you'd scribble, and I'd scribble and write out my whole essay, and then I'd go home and eat lunch and take a nap and wake up the next day and take the next exam, right? And this was all over the course of a week in May. And even though I had spent the entire year, all of the months, October, November, December, you take off for December and a bit of January or whatever, February, March, all of those months of the academic year, I was still doing academic work, but it wasn't until this 1 week at the beginning of May that anything counted towards my final grades. Now, during all of the previous months of the year at Oxford and Cambridge, we still had, assignments. We could call them intermediate assignments. I just made up this term, intermediate assignments, but I'm just talking about all of the assignments, homework, quizzes, problem sets, essays, whatever, all of the stuff that you're required to do along the way. At Oxford and Cambridge, we were still assigned these assignments, though I don't really think we were required to do them, and either way, they weren't graded. The only thing that got a grade were the exams that you took during that 1 week in May. The system of higher education that we have in the United States is less terrifying, right? Because we have all of these intermediate assignments, but they count towards your grade. It's not like everything rests on this 1 week of exams. But there is an advantage to the Oxford and Cambridge system. The advantage is this: because there are no grades for any of these things, it's obvious to everyone, to the students, to the professors, to everyone, it's obvious what the point of these assignments is. The point of them is not to get good grades. The point is for the students to actually learn. The purpose of intermediate assignments is to prepare you for the final exam by getting you to actually learn the material. And there were times when I was doing these intermediate assignments at Oxford and at Cambridge where I got to a point in my understanding where I probably could have handed in these intermediate assignments, and that maybe would have been enough to convince a graduate student or a professor or someone that I understood it, but where actually I didn't really understand it. I needed another half hour or another hour working on the stuff or whatever. I needed just a little bit more to actually get it. But because these things weren't graded, it was obvious to me that I needed to keep working until I actually understood it so that I could then use those same skills or whatever on the exams in May. Now's the part where you get into the mind of your college professor, maybe that college professor is me, right, for the courses that you're taking here in the United States. When we are choosing the course material, when we're picking which readings to read in which orders and which quizzes to assign and which essays to assign, when we're building the course, we're doing that so that it's structured, so that the knowledge that you gain, right, or the skills or the understanding or whatever, builds on itself over the course of the semester and indeed over the course of your whole college career. This might sound crazy, but even in the United States, where we grade these assignments, the purpose of these intermediate assignments is still to get the students to actually learn the material so that they're prepared for the next material that's coming next week or next semester or next year. And the fact that we give these intermediate assignments grades can actually distract you from that fact. They can cause you to forget that the point of these assignments is not just to get a good grade on these assignments, but is to actually learn the stuff. So if you get through a quiz or some homework or a problem set, you don't really understand it, but you get a grade and the grade is like good enough. Time to move on, right? No, not time to move on. Time to get worried. Time to study that same material a little more, because if you just pass it by, if you just move on without really understanding that foundational material, then you're going to make the later material way harder for you. If you take the time, the little bit of extra time, to understand the material now, that'll make the course easier in the future, and it'll make the next course next semester that relies on that information easier. It'll make the whole thing easier. Really, like everything else I'm talking about, this is a matter of efficiency. You have to do this problem set anyway, but it might be the case that you could spend just an extra 30 minutes. So instead of 2 hours, it's 2.5 hours. You could spend an extra 30 minutes to actually understand the material. An extra 30 minutes longer than it would take you to just get the problem set done, but to actually understand it a little better. That 30 minutes can save you 10 hours of frustration, 6 weeks later when you're preparing for the midterm. And this goes for courses that don't have problem sets. When I'm teaching ancient philosophy and I assign a reading by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, part of the reason to assign that is so that you have the experience of reading this fascinating work written by Plato. But another reason that we're reading Plato at that part of the course is so that 2 weeks later, when we get to Aristotle, you'll have the background material that you needed, the background understanding, so that you can understand what Aristotle is talking about. So what I'm telling you to do is to not forget to actually learn. And one last benefit of actually learning the material, if you really understand what you're learning, then you dramatically increase the chances that you will find it interesting. A lot of the things that are taught in college classes are actually cool and interesting things. And if you take the time to actually understand what's going on and to actually do the reading and then do it again to make sure you understand the reading, well, then you're going to be able to pull out all of that interesting stuff. And so then all of the time that you're spending in these college courses can be not just, productive or whatever, but also pleasant. In my experience, this is something that is very often overlooked. If you're not learning the material and understanding it, you stand almost no chance of figuring out what's cool or interesting about it. But if you take the time to do that, then the whole thing, your whole college experience, all of your courses, they will just be more fun.